Hi, I'm Stephanie, and this is a special episode of Texas Peach Knits for Fluff Your Stash 2024. I'm coming to you from west of Fort Worth, Texas, where I live with my husband and 4 children, whom we homeschool most of the time. Today is a special episode of Texas Peach Knits because I'm going to be talking about gentle ways to decrease your stash, as well as ways to increase that stash responsibly. And while the Texas Peach Knits Fluff Your Stash is not primarily a getting rid of stash type of make-along, it is good to look at that component, especially if you are at a place with your stash where it overwhelms you or you feel like you're bringing in a lot more than you are using. So it's always good to just self-reflect and think about your stash. So today's episode, I am not going to be showing you a whole lot of things. So if you like to listen on earbuds or you like to, listen to something, a podcast while you're walking, this might be a good one to use for that. So I would be very happy if you decide you're not going to watch and you're just going to listen. But I may put up some pictures from time to time to show examples of what I'm talking about, but probably not a whole lot. So why would you want to decrease your stash? Well, for some people, they realize that they are just not using it fast enough and they're bringing it in much faster than they can make use of it. And, having a yarn stash and collecting beautiful yarn can be a separate hobby from actually knitting that yarn or crocheting with that yarn. And that's okay if you have the income and the storage space, you go for it. I'm happy for you. And I have quite a bit of yarn storage space. I have a huge IKEA shelf, which I will share a picture of it uncleaned because I have not fluffed it yet this summer. That is one of my July goals. So I have a lot of yarn storage space, but I still find that it can overflow. And when it starts overflowing, that's when I'm like, maybe I need to rein it in a little bit. But I don't like the idea of yarn diets or freezing what you're buying, because anytime you put a really strong restriction on something, you're either going to revolt against yourself or you are going to substitute purchasing something else instead of yarn. So you need to pay attention to how you act when you do those types of things. So I can kind of do short yarn freezes, and I definitely don't usually buy just like whenever I feel like it on a whim, and that's just because of my budget restrictions. But everybody's different. Everybody can do what they want. So just take everything that I say and filter it through your life experiences and what you want to apply to your own life. So the reason I say a gentle decreasing of stash is because anytime something is painful, you're not going to stick to it, you're not going to do it. And I have 5 gentle things you can do that will help you decrease your stash without pain and without even knowing you're doing it in most cases. The first one is definitely keeping track of your yarn in and yarn out in a journal. And this can be something that you have a goal to use more than you bring in, or it can just be an assessment of what you use over the course of a year. It's really helpful to know how much you actually use, because you'll notice if I'm buying 3 times more than I use every single year, it's never going to add up right. So it gives you some good data to kind of think about. My favorite way to set up a yarn journal is definitely this method. 1 page with projects I start, projects I finish, yarn in, and yarn out. The second page is just for my project notes. I find that this is the best method for me because I don't like to get too overly wordy with my yarn journals, and I feel like if I'm trying to fill in all the details on every single project, I end up not doing it and I give up. So this is very, very simple, and it has really worked well for me. If you like to write a lot more than I do, you could try something different. You could also use a full-size notebook. This is one of those little like half-size notebooks. So you could just use a full-size notebook and you would have more space on the page. So basically, this is just so that you have a record of what's going on for real in your life. It's kind of like calorie counting or even tracking your budget. You're just visualizing what is happening and things are not kind of like sneaking in. You know how yarn just sneaks into your stash? So this could really help you just become aware of what your reality is. The second way I have to gently decrease your stash is to gift yarn. Gift yarn to your fiber friends. It is so fun to see someone who you mostly know through the internet or you only see sometimes, or even someone in your regular knitting group that you know you have something that they could use and love, and give them a yarny gift. It is such a sweet thing. It gets rid of your stash really fast, and you got the joy of both buying it and giving it. So gifting yarn to fiber friends is one of my favorite ways to very gently decrease your stash. My third way to decrease your stash gently is to unsubscribe from marketing emails. You knew it was coming. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about indie dyers unless you are very susceptible to their emails, because I really like following and supporting a lot of indie dyers that do a lot of great and beautiful work. And most of those indie dyers would not want you to go into debt buying their yarn. I am sure that they all want you to buy yarn, even from them, responsibly. But I'm mostly talking about like the big name yarn sellers, the online stores, Webs or Knit Picks or Wool Warehouse, all of these places where you are just like a small fry to them, and they send out tons of emails. So you do not have to hear about every single one of their sales unless you're specifically looking for a certain yarn and waiting for it to be on sale. So I would say unsubscribe from all of the giant yarn sellers' marketing emails. And you will save money and not add to your stash at least a few times a year by missing some of their sales. All right, my fourth way to gently decrease your stash is to start planning new projects based on what you already own. Now, I know it is a lot of fun to find a new, fresh pattern and say, I love this pattern, I want to knit it, and hope that you have something in your stash, but then fall in love with the pattern so much that you need to go buy new yarn for it. I'm saying try to do this backwards. Fluff that stash, look for things in your stash that you love, and then match those things to patterns that work with that yarn. So you can do this through websites like Ravelry. You can, pay attention to the yarn weight, the fiber type, and then find other patterns that use that yarn weight and that fiber blend so that you can kind of have a good match from the yarn you have to a pattern you could knit with it. And the reason this helps is oftentimes new patterns that come out are made with new yarns. So if you have a yarn in your stash from 10 or 15 years ago and that yarn is no longer made today, it's unlikely a new pattern is going to come out that is like for that yarn. So it's a really good idea to pay attention to what you already have and go backwards with your pattern search and match a pattern to your yarn. All right, my last tip is a little obvious. The fifth way to gently decrease your stash is to fluff it at least once a year. And by that I mean sort it, organize it, tidy it, rearrange it, and ultimately be familiar with what you have, and that way you can get excited about what you already have in your stash and be able to use that in projects that you want to knit. So those are my 5 ways to gently decrease your yarn stash. If you have another suggestion of a gentle way to decrease your yarn stash, please share it in the comments below. I'm sure it will help someone. All right. Now, since we talked about decreasing yarn stashes, I want to talk about increasing your yarn stash too. This is how to increase your yarn stash responsibly, and I have 5 ways to increase your yarn stash responsibly. I really think it is important to have a yarn pantry. This is something that has helped me save money and enjoy my hobby over the years. This is especially important if you have a small hobby budget that you're working with and you want to be able to craft in fairly large quantities on a fairly small budget. Having a yarn pantry is something you need. When you have a cultivated yarn pantry, first of all, you are not going to get stuck buying yarn full price or in a rush and buy something you might not have wanted. So I am not a person that says you should have no stash, you should always just buy the yarn for the project. I am not that person. I am in favor of having a cultivated collection of yarn in your home so you are ready for any project, almost any project you would like to tackle. All right, so the first step to cultivating your yarn pantry is to consider what you knit most often. I really think we all need to do a finished object audit. And what I mean by that is if you can go through the past year or 2 years or 5 years even and figure out how many baby blankets did I make? How many sweaters? How many pairs of socks? If you know that for several years in a row, you get a really good idea of what types and weights of yarn you need to do the types of projects that you enjoy making. If you find out that the majority of your projects are single solid colored sweaters, then random skeins of multicolored sock yarn are not going to help you in the type of knitting that you do. If you mostly knit socks, having 10 sweaters quantities of yarn is not going to be great for you. So definitely pay attention. What do I like to knit? What do I most often make? What kinds of gifts do I make regularly that I know are coming? Like, I know I make quite a few baby blankets, so having worsted weight acrylic yarn is helpful to have in my stash, but only if it's in colors appropriate for baby blankets. And I know you could fudge most colors and turn them into a baby blanket. I've done it, but there are definitely colors that are easier to match to like a baby style than others. All right, so that's number one. Do your finished object audit, figure out what you use most, and that is the type of yarn you should have most of in your yarn pantry. Number two, think about your preferences. Do you actually prefer to knit with brand new yarn? Do you love to purchase brand new yarn for a brand new project and get that like it's all new and exciting feeling? If you do, you might not need a huge yarn pantry. Do you like to mix and match yarns? Do you like to use up scraps? Do you always want to use the yarn suggested by a pattern? Do you let your project inspire the yarn choice? Or do you let the yarn you have inspire the pattern? Really think about those preferences, because that's going to decide what types of yarns you have in your stash. Number three, consider how much you knit or crochet. This goes with that keeping a yarn diary, a yarn in, yarn out. This is that too, the same thing. If you know that you're going to be knitting 5 or 6 skeins of yarn or 500 or 600 grams of yarn a month, then how much would a year's supply be? If you're only going to knit 2 pairs of socks a month and nothing else, do you really need all that other? Just think about it. So, and I'm not saying get rid of what you already have. I'm just saying as you make new purchases, think about for what and how you like to use your yarn. And make sure what you're purchasing matches that. Now, I know that several years ago, when I first started buying kind of like fancier yarns, I bought some lace weight yarns because I really thought this is so economical for me. I can knit longer because it is more yardage for less money. However, I rarely knit things out of lace weight yarn. It's usually a very special project when I go to grab a lace weight skein of yarn. So even if I am at a yarn store and they have an amazing sale on lace weight yarn, I know not to buy that because I already have some and I'm not using it. On the other hand, I love to knit random socks and socks for everybody, and I love to mix and match socks, and I love to do contrasting heels and toes. So anytime I see like solid colored sock yarns or, you know, opal sock yarn or anything like that on sale, I know it's a great deal for me because I know I'm going to use it. So really think about what you actually use when making those yarn purchases. All right, number 4, plan your yarn purchases around the sales. A lot of places have regular and somewhat predictable sales schedules. I find it's really helpful to keep a running list of the yarns that I'm looking for. If not like the exact yarn I'm looking for, the weight and the fiber type and the quantity that I need, so that when I see a really good sale online, I can pull up that list and make sure I get the things I actually wanted. And then this one kind of goes with number 5. Set aside money for that special yarn purchase. So if you know what your plans are for either like cultivating your yarn pantry or projects you really want to make, set aside your hobby funds for those. Don't get caught up by a flash sale of something you didn't want. And make sure you write down what it is that you were hoping to buy or what you're looking for so that you don't forget. And then also so you don't use that money for something else accidentally. These are the ways I say increase your yarn stash responsibly. Think about what types of things that you actually knit and crochet. Think about how you use yarn and cultivate that yarn stash to work for you. Don't make it a hindrance to what you want to make. Make it something that supports what you want to make. Okay, a few little updates on Fluff Your Stash. One, I finished my first bucket. Woohoo! And I need to print another one because I've already done more things and need to add them to a second one. Remember that this gets you into the grand prize drawing, which I have received, but I forgot to bring in here with me to show you guys, but it is amazing. So everyone that emails me their finished bucket, just the first one, you can do as many as you want because it's very motivating, but just one gets you into the grand prize drawing, and that will be at the beginning of September, but you have to email me your bucket by the end of August. June is over, so I compiled all of our Instagram posts, emails I received, Instagram stories from everyone that participated in June. We had 32 participants, which I thought was great, and 102 total entries into the drawing. So you guys have been doing some major stash fluffing, so I am proud of you. So I took a screenshot of my little, I did a little, it's where you put everyone's name in and say how many balls they get in the raffle, and then it spins around and spits out a ball, and that is who is our winner. So I'm going to share the screenshot. And congratulations to our winner, and I will contact you since I have everyone's information since you've either emailed me or been posting on Instagram, and I will get your information from you so that I can mail you your beautiful skein of Mystery Mouse Yarn Co. Sense and Sensibility sock yarn. Thank you all for all of your great posts and all of the inspiration. It has been just such a joy to see everything and see how motivated everyone has been. It's just really great. And there's still 2 months left of Fluff Your Stash. So if you haven't joined yet, just email me. My email is texaspeachknits@gmail.com, and I will email you the coloring sheet and instructions, and you still have plenty of time to join in. But just a little reminder, if you're posting on Instagram, please, please, please tag me at Texas Peach Knits on Instagram, because if you just use our hashtag, I may not ever see it and then I won't count it, which is sad. So if you want me to see it and be able to count it, make sure you tag me at Texas Peach Knits. I've been getting tons of dings from being tagged. It's okay. It's temporary, and I love it. I love that everyone is participating and having fun. So good job everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye.